I want you to have some courage, some inspiration, some motivation to not let imposter syndrome, fear of failing, fear of getting the no, the rejection, stop you from what you really want most for your business and all of the creative stuff that you want to put out there, but maybe your mind is stopping you. So this episode is to go deep into that because I know so many of us, you've been thinking on this post that you want to share on Instagram for weeks or months maybe, and you're hesitating, or the pitch you want to send to a brand or to be on a podcast or to have a collaboration, and you just don't do it. And again, you tell yourself, I'm not ready yet. And as you say that, you see so many other people growing and doing what you want to do. And so this is to give you that drive to go for it. This is for you. So we're going to unpack why it's happening, some of the psychology behind why we feel imposter syndrome, why we stop ourselves from doing the things that we know would help us to succeed, but there's really just this fear of rejection at the very base of it, and how we can manage through that. Now, the biggest thing I can say that will help you after this episode is feeling more confident in your message, in your positioning. That is going to help you really have the confidence to go and pitch and put yourself out there. And if that's something where you don't know where to begin, I really suggest listening to the episode called Private Podcast Peak. It's on here, Secrets to Standing Out, because I've got a private podcast called that. And it is all about episodes to help you take actions to stand out. You can find the link to get all those episodes or just listen to the one on her first 3 years or in the show notes. Let's begin. We've got 3 big concepts to go over here. Now, the first one, the ego self-worth loop. Now, you might know it as I'm not ready yet. And that is a huge brain trap that we put ourselves in. I remember this happening to me so many times, the feeling of like, I'm not ready yet. I don't feel like I can do this. Who am I to put myself out there and do it? And I think what made the biggest difference for me, where I got lucky, is when I was really young, just out of university, I was working with a woman who was the best person at putting herself out there when she wasn't ready, when she didn't have the credentials. And so this was a woman who was creating a book and interviewing very top leaders. We're talking about founders of PayPal. We're talking about many, many famous nonprofits, politicians, etc. in the world. And she was someone who honestly didn't have the credentials, as you would think, to go and talk to these people. But she was so confident and she found a way. And it is amazing how she got them to sit down with her and do this. And some of those interviews I was there for. That I'm not ready yet doesn't actually mean anything, because it's just about you having the courage and the confidence to move forward. And the mistake we make is assuming that everyone else who's doing it, everyone else who you look at, who's doing the Instagram post you wish you would have created, or has the collab, or is on the podcast, or created the product, all of those people have been in a position where they also were not ready yet, where they didn't have the credentials. So that was a really big thing that showed me what's behind the curtains, so to speak. Here's where it comes from, though. We have this fear of putting ourselves out there, and it's almost ego preservation. So if you think of ego as your identity, the way you see yourself, it is something that we try to protect so much. And so this is why we often avoid getting hurt, getting rejected, being wrong. And in terms of this visibility issue, in terms of just trying before you're ready or before you're big enough or whatever, the ego is often saying this to you. If I try and fail, it confirms my unworthiness. So if I don't get the results I want, then I'm right in assuming that I'm not good enough. I'm not big enough. My worst fears about who I am are proven. And I have felt like this so many times. Quite honestly, it is only in the last 2 years of 12 as an entrepreneur that I have been able to separate the results and the outcome, the failures, from my self-worth. Because I was also trained, like you probably, to think if my performance is good, then I am good enough. And so this is the loop that we fall in that really stops us from trying new things, because our ego is saying, don't do it. Don't do it. And instead of telling us why we shouldn't do it, it's never going to say because you'll feel unworthy. It will say things like, oh, you don't have enough experience. Maybe you should wait a little bit longer. And it's fueled even more by the comparison trap. And something that's so interesting about the way we compare ourselves is you're not going to compare yourself to someone who is doing worse than you. Almost never. You're going to compare yourself to someone who is doing better. You're comparing upward. And so if you compare upward, you are always going to feel like you are falling behind. This is what fuels a lot of times that imposter syndrome, is the feeling that, wow, look at how good these people are doing. We don't stop to think, oh, but they've had X amount of years more, or they've had this experience previously. It's just they are doing better. And while imposter syndrome is very much a part of the growth process, because there's no way you can do something new and not feel this, it's important to understand how to manage it and how we really tend to compare always upward. Think about something that you don't care about. It doesn't matter to you at all that people can be ranked in. So for example, for me, I don't care about most sports. So I don't even watch them. Like, let's use American football as an example. I don't even know who the players are on the teams at this point, or whatever the teams are. If I were looking at a American football player and they're doing really well, I really wouldn't care that I'm not at that level. I would never compare myself to that person because I don't care about excelling there, and I understand the differences we have. But we do that in the spaces we do care about. So I used to do it in the fitness space. I would compare myself to the top fitness influencer, to the top instructor, even though it is the same thing, right? Like, how can I possibly expect to get to where they are without doing the work? And it often stops you from doing the work because it feels so far away, and it's easier to just say, let me wait. Because if you say, let me wait, it tricks you into believing that one day you'll try. And if you're saying, let me wait, that's basically the same as saying, I probably won't do it. So we want to shift away that. So let's stop for a moment here. And I want you to imagine something you're pitching, something really bold, either to be, on a podcast, to do a collaboration, to work with a brand, to create an offer. Think of something that would be so bold for you. You can't even imagine doing it for 3 years from now. What does fear tell you will happen if it's rejected? What is your fear saying to you will happen if the product, whatever, it doesn't work? This is the story your ego is trying to protect. And so for me, there's been a lot. This is a very vulnerable share that I'm only doing because I really want to help you. I don't really feel comfortable sharing it, but I think this podcast is about the uncomfortable. My big fear for a long time, the ego story I had around this, where I would sometimes not put myself out there, even though I had this early experience of seeing it's necessary. I still had fears, of course. I'm going to find out that I'm not as good as everyone else there, that I'm lacking something. All these people at the top of whatever I wanted to achieve has some secret ingredient that I just don't have. And part of that was driven by having a background that was non-traditional, family structure and everything. I felt like from the beginning, I was the misfit, the outsider lacking something. And that has carried on for years and years and years. And it's really hard to remove that. But when I realized that, I could say, okay, me not trying is not because I don't have enough information. It's not because I don't have time. It's not because I want more experience. It's because I don't want to find out that I'm lacking something they have. And what I discovered, which you might see too, is that I was lacking something that all successful people had. And that was the willingness to try, experiment, and fail. That was the only difference. So I want you to name your ego. And you might hear this and think that is the most cliche thing. I've heard it so many times. How is that possibly going to help me? So let me explain a little bit how this works in your mind. For years, I worked in behavioral change psychology, and it was helping people shift really difficult lifestyle habits. So we're getting people to do things that they haven't done most of their lives. And what you see again and again here is that they have one voice in their heads, which is the ego. And when you have one voice in your head saying, you can't do this habit, or look, you failed again, there is nothing to counteract it. And so how can you create a second voice? That is by you naming the first one. Because when you see like you are not that voice in your head, it becomes like it opens doors, because then you add a second voice. In the case of the behavioral change I used to do, the second voice says, you know what? I can do this now. I have the support and tools I needed, so it's going to be different this time. Same thing for you. Really, really think about that. And leaving you with this thought before we go into the second of the 3 ideas here is that your ego, it's basically like a clingy friend that is worried and panicking about you getting embarrassed. It wants to save you. This friend wants to protect you, so you can listen and you can still do the thing. Now, in the second idea, this is something that I said just a little bit earlier in this episode. I don't know if you noticed it. Stop letting imposter syndrome or the self-doubt hold you back by unhooking your self-worth from outcomes. This is the biggest lesson that exists in business and in life. And the irony is that when you stop caring about the results is when you get them. I'll explain why that happens, the psychology, the science of it in a moment. But I want you to first think about if you need to fail 10,000 times, which I'm not saying you do, but you probably need to fail at least a few. How can you do that if you allow yourself to get so upset and so damaging your self-worth every time you fail? You can't get ahead. Where this made a difference for me was first in my early work experience when I saw a lot of these politicians and leaders said no, right? But we still got some because we kept trying. And then it was also where I have thought about how many times I have pitched myself to do something. And in the beginning, it was really difficult to hear no, to get ghosted. And I would often associate a meaning with that, such as, oh, it's because they don't think I'm good enough. They don't think I can do this. Which is possible. And so the more I did it, the less hurtful it became. Because when you hear no once every couple months, it stings. When you hear no every day, it doesn't. Because you understand that as you go through these no's, you get a yes. And this is the biggest thing for you to think about here. Often when people say no to you, they're saying no to the way that you have positioned or pitched them. They're not actually saying no to you and maybe not even to your idea. It's the way that you have done it. This is where I'm going to call you again that if that's something you struggle with, like you don't understand how to position yourself differently, listen to the Secrets of Standing Out private podcast. That first episode 1 is on this one. You can listen there and you can also get the full series because I have found that you get so much more confidence and you can really hear the no when you realize that you're actually putting yourself forward with your best foot. Because when we don't do that, when we're not fully confident in our message, our positioning, people sense that. This is also, by the way, separate topic, but something that I saw with when we have money issues and issues around pricing our products, etc. It's because we have not firmly figured out our positioning, our offer, whatever it is, and we don't feel comfortable charging the price. And people pick up on that. One of the most helpful things to understand around this is that people are not actually motivated and driven by external validation. So the likes, the approval, it seems like that is the thing that moves you forward and you have trained yourself to do that. We're taught in school how to do that. We're taught as kids, oh, you did so well at this, to really keep moving towards what we're already good at because we get that external validation. But the truth is that what you really thrive in is when you have intrinsic inside motivation. Because when you have the inside motivation, when you're fully aligned, you understand your positioning, you know your messaging, you can do stuff and keep going and getting better, even when people don't give you the likes, when people don't comment, when they don't share, when they even sometimes control you. It doesn't matter if they're trolling you because you already believe what you really want to say. I know that's hard for a lot of people listening. It was hard for me too, to imagine that the criticism and the ghosting won't matter. But really, when you start to build up this sense of what you really want to say and doing the work that you really love, it will not bother you. And again, if you don't know what that is, there are resources here to help you figure that out. How I could hear no hundreds of times or ghosted or being ignored was from creating and building intrinsic inside motivation, because when you do that, you have a barrier, a resilience to rejection. But we're taught instead a lot of times to pursue extrinsic motivation. This is the likes, this is the comments, this is the pat on the back, this is the person buying the product. We're really trained for that. And what that does is it amplifies imposter syndrome, amplifies the shame cycle, because if you don't get the yes or the result that you want, you tie it to your self-worth and you continue to fail because you don't keep trying and getting better. So that shift from external, please like me, to intrinsic, internal, I'm going to find what's aligned with me and I will say my voice and message, makes the difference entirely. Here's something to help you shift rejection. Think about 3 places, 3 things that you currently tie your self-worth to, the outcomes. So examples could be my follower count, my likes, my sales, my responses. What are 3 things that you tie your self-worth to in your business, what you create? How could you maybe shift away from that? So for example, if I am obsessed with likes, I want to then go away from that and say, okay, could I instead make sure that every post I make is so aligned with what I believe and not what I think they want? Then when I release that post, I am motivated by the fact that I have just done what I really wanted to do and said what I needed. And I can be okay with no one or very few people liking it. It's a hard shift to make. I know. I will tell you right now that the posts that I make now about finding your true voice and really saying what you want never get as much attention as the ones where I really looked at the trends and I was doing the dancing or the fitness thing, but they feel so much better to put out there. And I don't care as much about the likes. Think of your 3 and really get to know what is your inner true voice that you want to share, because the less you fight that, the easier it's going to be. And I'm going to leave you with one more image to think about before we go into the 3rd idea here, 3rd and final. Rejection is feedback. It's not a verdict. It doesn't mean you're not worthy. It's just feedback that might mean it's not the right person to buy, to work with you, not the right time. Maybe you said it is not the right way. It's almost as if you think about someone who creates a cupcake, right? Like they bake a cupcake. If someone doesn't like your cupcake, it might just be they don't like chocolate. It might be they don't like how much flour. It might be your cupcake sucks, but you learn to make it better next time. So really trying to not attribute so much heaviness to what other people accept about you and your business or don't. Now, our last idea is this: putting yourself out there before you feel ready. This is a very difficult thing for me to do even now, but it was a lot harder before. And I have this moment whenever I do something that I don't feel ready for, where it's like looking at the edge of a cliff and saying, am I really going to jump this? That's how it feels. And I still go and I do it, because what happens when you trust yourself enough times is that you know that you can make that jump. If you go away from the cliff every single time because you're scared, then you never build that confidence. We've heard that so many times. You're not going to be ready for the things you want to do. The people who succeed are the ones who keep pushing even when they're not ready. I was not ready to launch my first podcast. I actually did wait 2 years, but I probably could have waited another 5. I wasn't ready to start my own business or any of the businesses. I wasn't ready to move countries. I wasn't ready to start the relationship. I wasn't ready to do all of these things, and I still did them anyway. Because the thing with being ready is that it is essentially perfectionism. And that is just the idea that you either are good at something or not. You either can pitch this or you can't. And it doesn't really work that way in life. And oftentimes the idea in your head or the thing you want to do, the first version is not great, but the only way it gets better is by putting it out there. There's actually an amazing interview I have coming up with an incredible woman named Emily, and she is the founder of Robe Curls, which you might have seen in the TikTok sensation there. And she was saying how they released that product before it was perfect how she wanted it, before the packaging was exactly as she wanted, etc., because then they could get feedback and keep making it better and better. And she only learned that lesson from having released the product previously that she tried to make perfect first. So it really is this idea of, I can only make this actually good if I put it out there. You know, I've been on a lot of podcasts as a guest, but I have pitched probably hundreds. They don't all say yes, even now, even if it makes sense. And there was a time where that would bother me, but now it doesn't. So now think about what is one pitch, post, opportunity that you've delayed because you don't feel ready. Think about one of those. What is the smallest, messiest step you could take this week towards that? So let's say it's a post that you really believe strongly about. Write it. You don't need to release it even yet. Just write it. You want to start a book. Write the first sentence. Don't worry about if it's crap. You know, I wrote a book in 3 months, and the only reason I could do that is because every day I told myself, if it's not good, it doesn't matter. Can always get good later, but I don't need it to be perfect this first time. So thinking about what have you been delaying on? What's the tiniest step you can take forward for that? Ultimately, you being out there, you having opportunities, collabs, being known, being bigger is all about building a muscle. Visibility is a muscle, but there's no way that you can be strong, that you can be big, that you can be out there before doing the exercises, lifting the weights. That is what gets you stronger. Every failed rep, every time you keep trying something, that is what gets you there. Trying to wait and sit at home and hope that it happens or that one day you're ready, it just doesn't work that way. And if you're sitting here thinking, okay, I get it, I need to be more visible, I see I need to train this, but I really don't know where to begin. This is where, again, I'm gonna say, go download Secrets to Standing Out Online, that private podcast. You can find it on Her First 3 Years, because that is going to show you 10 different ways, little mini things you can do right now to be more confident, even if you're not ready. If we sum up what this episode is all about, what you've learned here, what you can walk forward and do, and I really hope you feel more fired up and ready, is ego is there to protect you. This identity you have that stops you, that says, not yet, can't do it yet, is there to protect you. However, if you want to grow, if you want to be bigger, if you want to have more impact, then you have to show up anyway and really face that rejection. The way that you can feel better about rejection is if you start cultivating that inner confidence and really say, the outcome doesn't matter. It's just that I did it, that I tried. Other point we talked about here is that comparison is probably the worst thing about this, because it's going to distort your reality. It's going to make you think all these people got the yes, all these people started big, recognizing that we have all gone through this in one way or another. It's about refining, putting yourself out there. It's not about perfection. You will be rejected. You'll also be received and told yes. Neither of those define you. What does is you continuing to consistently show up. And again, if you want to make this whole process feel a little bit easier, just standing out, get that private podcast. It will help you. It's quick. It's easy. Thank you so much for listening. If you find this episode helpful, if it stirred your energy, please share it with someone else, because all of us are feeling self-conscious, like we can't go forward, and with a self-doubt. And sometimes hearing these words can make all the difference. Share it to empower those you love, and I will see you in the next one.